Do you know how to tell the difference between a person with a toxic personality disorder, such as a narcissist, and a person with immaturities, maybe such as a man child? Welcome. Welcome to Passion Unlimited podcast. I am your host, psychotherapist, author, and founder of Fearless Love, Gianni Adamo. In today's episode, I will be discussing how to figure out if you are dealing with a toxic narcissist or if you are dealing with a late man, a man child. And if you are dealing with the late man, the man child, what does he need to grow up and how can you tell the difference? Okay, so as a therapist who specializes in relationships and couples work, and also an expert in narcissistic abuse, I have gotten so many emails and texts and communication and phone calls of women believing that they are in a relationship with a toxic narcissist. But upon further, research and working with them, I find out like they're not really involved with a narcissist. What they've got in their hands is a man child. So let's start out by defining what is a man child. Okay, so a man child is a male, adult male who functions more like a lost child or an angry teenager. Basically, if you are the man child, you're kind of dependent on your partner in a way as if you were dependent on a parent. So basically, you are stuck in a parent-child relationship. So this is not a balanced of power or balanced relationship. Instead of being in an adult to adult relationship, which is two equals, okay, on two equal playing fields. So a man child usually is stuck also needing and wanting excessive romantic and or sexual approval. So some of them will have wandering eyes, not all though will have wandering eyes. And because they're emotionally underdeveloped, like a teenager, they often show up late in life, late to their commitment, late to to actually getting married. They struggle at times with depression or depressed moods, with anxiety, and a ton of self-sabotaging behaviors, causing them problems at home and at work. So usually a man with, who's a late man or a man who has these types of immaturities will end up sabotaging his marriage many times and ending up divorced or just in long-term separation situations. There's also a level of indecisiveness that some of these late men have, where they're always overwhelmed and they feel like people are always taking advantage of them. There's also this distrust in themselves. So they kind of know that they don't really trust themselves deep down inside. So they struggle to take on responsibility and they take everything very personal. So they basically a lot of them have anger management problems. And if they don't have anger management problems and they deal with a ton of anxiety that they are trying to cope with, they're generally, just about all of them are very passive aggressive and defensive. When they don't get what they want, they throw tantrums or they become explosive or they're manipulative, and they have a hard time becoming vulnerable. So a man child typically does come from a dysfunctional family that may have had divorced parents or just a broken household where the father was emotionally or physically absent, and a mom who was either overworking or overprotective of that son or that child, or she was overly dependent on that son to protect her and to provide her with the things that her husband should have provided her. Maybe too much emotionally, the emotional boundaries were blurred and too much she depended too highly on that son and gave him way too much attention. Okay, so by midlife, the man-child has established long patterns of self-sabotage. So you're going to recognize that for those of you who are divorced and re-entering the dating scene. Please watch out for these signs. Please open your eyes. I'm like, the dating scene can be a little crazy and chaotic, and this is why it's flooded with a lot of late men and man children. Not only are is the dating scene flooded with the narcissist, but it's also flooded with these individuals who have a hard time creating a safe and healthy relationship. So some patterns that you're going to know by midlife, some of these man children have, is they have chronic unemployment or underemployment issues. They lack success in their careers or their work environments. So therefore, financially, they're usually up and down, very unstable, and they've gone through probably a ton of hardships. They tend to have higher rates of divorce and lots of separations. And technically, they tend to have addictions to whether it's the internet, video gaming, pornography, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it is prescription drugs, because they tend to also have chronic pain and health problems that would bring them to obviously the prescription drug issue. So in addition to anxiety, they tend to also suffer sometimes from depression and chronic shame, feelings of worthlessness. They may not label it as shame, but technically is feelings of feeling worthless. Therefore, they tend to have anger management problems, which comes in to mask their shame. And there's a lot of social isolation, and they will isolate many times even from family and friends, but not all do. Some of them actually stay close to their family and friends. So how does the man-child see themselves and others? Underlying all of this, they see themselves as not being good enough. Okay, so the man-child may admit at first, may admit this at first, but then, so they may have a little bit of awareness that they don't feel like they fit in, or that they're adequate, or that they may feel incompetent or inferior. They may also feel like they're lazy, or they may feel defeated or just not good enough. So these are some of the things that if the man-child actually comes into therapy, we work with these belief systems. Another way that they see themselves is that they feel misunderstood, and that they are doing the best they can, but nobody kind of really understands them, and everybody's criticizing and judging them. That's kind of like their psychology. So ultimately, they see themselves as victim, and they play victim. Thus, you are listening to this podcast because you're confused. And do I have a narcissist on my hand, or am I dealing with an immature man, a man-child? Okay, so what does a late man or a man-child feel? They generally, their go-to emotion is generally anger. And from there, they're stuck like a teenager. They're stuck developmentally, and they're only allowing themselves to feel the anger and express it, like, because they always feel like they're being treated unfairly. So this anger is always coming up. I've had some clients come in with this issue as couples where they were they were not engaged. Actually, they were dating and they wanted to get engaged. But one of the issues that was causing them not to take it to the next level was his chronic issues with anger. And she no longer felt safe with him. And so they came in together to seek treatment to deal with this issue with his anger. And another issue she had with him is that whole issue of the engagement, because after 3 years together, he still had not purchased the ring, and they had been talking about marriage for over a year. So between those two topics, they came into therapy. At the end, he resolved several of his underlying issues, but they did decide to go their separate ways. Okay. Another feeling that the late man or the man-child usually is suffering from, this one is a suffering from, is shame. And they don't know that they're actually dealing with shame, because unfortunately shame makes us feel so yucky and so broken that most of us have really strong psychological defenses to block this and to not embrace this shame. So actually anger comes in as one of these defenses. The other one is his ability not to be vulnerable in a relationship and always trying to make himself look right and fair and just, and like he's always fighting for something, and you're just trying to have a conversation. Okay, so another issue with the emotional state of a man-child is that many times they are numb, or they're numbing themselves. So again, they revert back to addictive behaviors that will numb them and not allow them to feel this worthlessness or this feelings of failure that they have deep down inside. And at the end of the day, they feel like they're injured people, and they don't believe in others. They, that they don't really trust themselves, and they believe everybody's seeing them unfairly or putting unreasonable demands on them. They feel judged, underappreciated, and misunderstood. These are like running themes in a man-child's life. Okay. So in a relationship, they fail to protect and they fail to provide. So these are definitely issues that if you're in a relationship with a man-child, you're going to be running to a therapist to see if that can be changed and evolved. A healthy man normally has really great self-esteem around his ability to provide well, not only for himself, but also for his family. Also, a healthy male also has a lot of self-esteem around his ability to protect not only himself, but his wife and his children. And the healthy male also has really strong self-esteem around knowing that he is a solid problem solver. And these are things that the man-child will fail at over and over and over again. And the woman is going to be technically quite frustrated with him, continuously believing in all his goodness and all his talents and his potential. And yet he fails over and over and over again to meet those potentials. In fact, he's yelling, "Stop trying to change me. I am who I am, and you need to love me just the way I am." But in reality, he needs to grow up. And this is part of the problem. He can't see that he needs to grow up. Okay. So again, within his relationship, he's emotionally disconnected, or sometimes even physically disconnected. So therefore, if he's busy with his addictive behaviors, he's escaping his real relationship and escaping his real life. So again, these things will bring a couple who's, with where there's a man-child involved to therapy. There are a couple of guys that I have worked with who are actually really, really good human beings, because some of these man children are actually very loyal and committed. Not all of them need all this attention from other women. One of them suffered from anxiety. So his escape was, he had OCD. His escape was to go organize closets, pantries, whatever. Everything needed to go get organized instead of being emotionally present for his partner, or even sexually. So that means he also avoided sexual intimacy. He avoided the whole thing. Another one of the men that I worked with that also was a man-child. He was also quite committed. That first one was married. The second one was engaged to be married. And he didn't have a problem being committed to his girlfriend. His issue was that he was very self-centered, and he always preferred to go do his things. He would rather go skiing and go do things that she really had no interest in, and like leave her behind and not give her a lot of time in the home where he would be present. Because again, he would escape for, he would always be, his head would be somewhere else. He would be emotionally disconnected, whether it was playing a video game or watching TV. He didn't give her a lot of the emotional connection that she needed. And then physically he would leave and go on these trips all the time where he was not present for her. So there was always these moments that, they were always feeling like there was at least she was feeling the disconnection. Okay. But again, this man child, as I described, was not the one who's out there trying to cheat and trying to create another relationship behind the scenes or anything like that. Okay. So when you're in a relationship with the man child, you will find out that your communication is quite difficult, especially around conflict. The man child will redirect conversations, and they will also shift blame and make you the problem instead of their lack of being present to you, or their lack of maturity, their lack of being able to provide well for themselves and for the family. They'll just turn it onto you that you're the complainer and the nagger. The fact that you want more sexual intimacy because some of them are not, or they're kind of shut down. Again, you want too much. No one else has complained but you in reference to how much sex they want from him. So anyways, I know, which is the opposite problem with other couples. So these are some telltale signs. Okay. And again, some of these men who are man children actually are really good dads, because again, they're kind of developmentally at the same age as their children, and they can play with them, and they're really really cool with some of their children. So they can be really awesome fathers. Okay. So also with, being in a relationship with a man child, a lot of times they will give facts. And when the facts are wrong, they can just say that they were sharing, he was just sharing his opinion. Again, they will fail to protect, and they tend to see themselves and shift things to look like they're somehow the victim. So some of these things overlap with a narcissist. So you're like, you're probably still like saying, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm still dealing with a man child or a narcissist. So, okay. So these traits that I've given you, are traits of narcissism, but not necessarily a narcissist, which means they're very self-centered. They're very self-focused. They're immature. So that would be your man child. The narcissist, just to kind of define the narcissist a little bit now, is a person who has a pervasive long-term pattern of grandiosity, which means that they think they're better than you and everybody else. And either they say it or they think it or in their action. Okay. And they have this excessive need for admiration, and they have this also strong sense of entitlement, and they lack empathy. So they don't really feel sorry for you when you're hurting. So the narcissist, someone with a personality disorder, is preoccupied with achieving power over others and success, as well as their appearance. So they're always living by the mirror, and they absolutely love the selfies. They want to be the most popular person on social media or wherever the heck their community is. And they love having like the fans that feed them. And they find excitement exploiting and taking advantage of others. And the majority of narcissistic personality disordered individuals are men. And if they're antisocial personality disordered, they're usually almost all men. There are very few on the female side that go to that extreme of type of abusive, toxic personalities. We do have other personalities where more women fall into, but I will discuss that further in another podcast. All right. So a narcissist tends to act differently in different situations. So this is another differentiating factor. So the narcissist will be very charming and even kind in public view and public sight. While back home, it's another story. There's just a lot of abusive and cruel behaviors and words to their partner at home. So toxic narcissists not only want the attention, but they also want everyone else to feel inferior to them. Okay, so if you are starting to see that pattern, this is a telltale sign that you're probably more on the dealing with a narcissist. So the narcissist is going to be more sadistic, and they actually kind of enjoy hurting people, and they kind of thrive, seeing this happen because they feel like it's victory, and they're looking for control and power. The narcissist also finds it entertaining when people, when they set up people and then they watch these people fall, they think it's, again, like, this is kind of cool. It proves to them that they're just superior. That's the way they're looking at this. So again, it's about power. It's about superiority. And through their history, a narcissist will have a history of chaos and toxic relationships. So these are some of the telltale signs that you're dealing with a real narcissist when you're seeing some of these things. Okay, if you're still confused about whether or not you're married or in a relationship with a narcissist or a man-child, ask yourself these couple of questions. How does my husband show me empathy or compassion? This is usually the first question I will ask a client, a female client who would come in by herself without her husband, and she doesn't know if she's dealing with, one or the other. So the first question is, how does he show you empathy or compassion? And many times I'll ask the narcissist when they're in my practice for therapy with their partner. I will ask that question to the narcissist, and you can see how quickly they're stunted because that never even crossed their mind to even think about offering their partner some form of compassion or empathy. That's how far removed they are from this concept of providing love and empathy and compassion to their partner. So anyways, another question you could ask yourself is, when I am sick, does he care for me? Does he go to CVS and get you some Tylenol? Does he make you some chicken soup or buys you some soup at the supermarket and brings it to you? Does he make you maybe a cup of tea when you're sick? Does he tell you to stay in bed, not to go to work? Unless, of course, he made you sick and doesn't want you to go to work because he wants to keep you isolated. So that's another sign. Another sign of a toxic narcissist. They want to isolate their partner. Okay, so if your partner isn't trying to isolate you when he's telling you stay in bed because you're sick, then that's fine. If he's the one who made you sick and tells you to stay in bed, then you know you're dealing with the narcissist. Okay. Is your partner concerned with your well-being? So this is another question. Does my husband, my boyfriend, care for my well-being? Does he want to see me succeed in life, like genuinely? Or is he just looking for you to go work so he could stay home and not work and not do anything, and then you just, take care of him at the emotional, financial, sexual, at every level in life? Okay, so part of the problem there again is that the man-child is stuck in a parent-child relationship with you. And in order to come out of that parent-child relationship with one another, you guys will need to seek out a therapist who will help you guys to grow and evolve together. And hopefully you're not involved with a narcissist, because if you are, then you definitely need support and help as an individual more than a couple. I would seek out a therapist for your own individual work, because you now are dealing with layers of betrayal, layers of trauma, layers of just issues and things that have impacted your self-esteem, and you will need an individual a therapist that will work with you individually to help you to repair and get back your power, so you can figure out what is going to be your healthiest option for your situation. Okay, so as we round out our time for today, healthy men see themselves more honestly and become more responsible and emotionally balanced, which empower them over time to be better husbands, to be better fathers, and better leaders. So this concludes our relationship reboot series of Passion Unlimited podcast. And so next week, stay tuned that we're going to be starting our next season 4, which is on From Love Trauma to Fearless Love. And we're going to be unpacking the toxic relationships and how to heal, renew, recover, and get your power back and move on to the next stage of your life, whether you're together or separate or whatever the situation is. We're going to unpack this further. The next episodes also will be discussing my new audiobook, which is now releasing this next week on Amazon. The book is already out and it's a bestseller on Amazon. You can order that online, or there's an ebook as well. And if you are new to Passion Unlimited podcast, please subscribe. You can find Passion Unlimited podcast where podcasts are heard. You can join me on Facebook, Passion Unlimited podcast group, and you can comment, you can suggest topics. That would be fantastic. You can also find me on YouTube. Please comment, please share. This is how YouTube and the podcast stations know that this topic is relevant, because you choose to interact with me. You choose to share this stuff. You choose to like it. You choose to comment and subscribe. And then therefore YouTube and the podcast stations know, like, okay, this is relevant material. So let's keep showing it to other people. So please, please, please share, comment, and I hope to see you or hopefully hear from you next time. Be well.